Hello, everyone. Thanks to the good folks over at O'Reilly Media, we will be giving away a free pass to OSCON 2015 in Portland. To enter, just send us an email at show@thecloudcast.net between now and Friday, July 10th, and tell us about your open source journey. Most interesting story wins. And even if you don't win, use the code CLOUD20 and you'll get a 20% discount on your registration. Thanks for listening, and now on to the show.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. Back after a nice long week of vacation and a bunch of weeks on the road doing events. Today we've talked for a long time about AWS and what AWS is doing and their ecosystem. Prior to the AWS Summit, which is coming up this week in New York City, we're going to dig into that ecosystem a little bit today, and we're excited to have both Joel and MJ from Cloudnexa, which is one of AWS's premier partners. So, Joel and MJ, give us a little bit of your background. Give us an introduction to both yourselves as well as Cloudnexa.
Sure. This is Joel Davne. I'm the CEO from Cloudnexa. I've been in the AWS ecosystem since 2008, so we're kind of long-timers here. Some would say we could lay claim to being the original AWS partner. There's a rumor to that anyway. But yeah, I mean, we're deeply tied to AWS. We've been dedicated in doing 100% AWS partner activities since the very beginning. And prior to this, I was part of a firm called Freedom OSS. It was actually the predecessor of Cloudnexa. And in my way background, I started out in healthcare and healthcare IT. And MJ, you want to?
Yeah, my name's MJ DiBerardino. I'm the CTO with Cloudnexa. Also one of the founding team members with Joel. I've been working with Joel as well as in our predecessor, Freedom. Prior to Cloudnexa, I've been working in several cloud companies, starting back in 2006 with SaaS and Salesforce, and then moving over to infrastructure as a service. Now completely dedicated to AWS. Okay,
excellent. So you guys have seen, having gone back to 2008, you've seen, sort of not only how AWS has evolved, but the market for people who want to leverage AWS, where they're looking for assistance.
You're asking about the changes, and it's funny. I could tell you equivocally, there's a lot less doubters out there today than there was back in 2008.
Right.
It seemed like I can remember the early days. People were saying, nobody will ever use cloud, and certainly not for anything that's production related. And of course, now we're seeing all aspects of business using AWS in full production. And I think the greatest win of recent days was the CIA Intelligence Cloud and Marketplace, which I think just kind of sealed the deal. So a lot of changes, all very positive. Adoption is strong. But in terms of the AWS team growing, it's just amazing. They continue to probably double. Seems like that every year. And I can remember going back to one of the very first all-hands meetings, and geez, there had to be less than 100 people in the room, and that included a lot of the engineering team back at the PacMed building. And the last time that we were there for a sales kickoff, I believe there was roughly 1,200 sales and marketing professionals in the room just this past February. So it kind of gives you an idea on scale and how they're growing.
Right. Yeah, I think at the last time I looked, they had about 2,000 job openings as well. So now you guys talk about Cloudnexa being sort of a born in the cloud company. What does that mean in terms of, a couple of years ago, people were saying, well, if cloud takes off, it changes the model for VARs and managed service companies and, sort of everybody who's in between the technology and the customers. You guys are a little bit different. Talk about kind of why you went down the path you did and what your business looks like in terms of, being helping your customers get to the cloud and the types of things that you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, I heard Tiffany Bova's presentation on Born in the Cloud, and I went up to her from Gartner, and I went up to her afterwards. I was like, you nailed us. I mean, it was the first time I heard the presentation, but the characteristics that she defines as typical Born in the Cloud companies is really what Cloudnexa is. When we were part of Freedom and spun out and formed Cloudnexa, we had to reinvent ourselves. We were acutely aware of the model that Amazon was running, and it, of course, is a consumption model. And they're layering in more and more services that helps improve the stickiness. But by and large, it still is a consumption model. So I had some early exposure to the professional services, traditional SI models, and we, as a team, decided that that wasn't what we wanted to be with Cloudnexa. We wanted to be lean. We wanted to have a very defined utility-based business model. And in fact, there were customers that just didn't fit that model anymore, which, Tiffany says that that's a typical characteristic where you just say no, and we do that frequently. And same thing for staff. There was actually some staff that just didn't fit the new model. So we trimmed up. We put our heads down. We said, okay, we're born in the cloud. And initially, we kind of hedged our bet a little bit in our pricing model, Brian. We had some floors in place that basically said, well, you can use our services, but you're going to have to pay a monthly minimum of X. And it was a small amount. I think the lowest price was like $250 or $199. And we ran that model for a few months, and the market was like, not really doing it for us. And so I think it was June of 2013, we said, you know what, let's just run it like Amazon does and say, come and go as you please. We believe in our product set. We believe in the solutions that AWS offers, and we took out all the floors, and all of a sudden it went crazier. We started onboarding lots of customers and have been doing so since. And when you talk about a traditional VAR and even SIs, you're always interested in locking in customers, right? Because customer acquisition cost is high.
Right.
But we look at it the other way. We look at it like customers will stay with us because they like our services, and we're adding value at every point of the delivery chain. And if we're not doing that, customer ought to be able to leave. And that's the way we run the business. And we have some churn, but every company's got some churn. And by and large, our growth rate, not by and large, factually, our growth rate has just been astronomical to support the model.
Right. Yeah, it's, what I see more and more in the marketplace is you've got to, as you're designing your product, you're designing your service, you've got to sort of find all those points of friction between you and the customer and try and eliminate as many of those. And some of that's just sort of, inherent. Like you would normally think that, but even like you were talking about, a couple of $100 a month, which might be, the coffee bill for a lot of people. That's a barrier sometimes, and you've got to figure out ways to go, okay, I want to get them in. And then, like you said, you sort of add value, you make it a great experience around what they're getting. And then they tend to want to stay because they love the experience. They love the value that they're getting.
We've had customers leave and come back.
Sure.
And part of it is really, when you talk about traditional VARs, they'll cast a wide net, right? But lane 3 swimmers, it's very focused. So we know who our target prospects are, and our customers need us because they don't have the internal services, or they don't want to devote the resources internally, or maybe they've had people come and go, and they don't want to have the fluctuations in the management of their environment. So our customers need us. We do a good job for them, and we do it at a very, very, very fair price, for sure.
Now Aaron and I, Aaron's not on today, but we're big fans of a guy named Simon Wardley, who kind of a big industry thinker, but talks a lot about, one of the advantages that an ecosystem like AWS has is not only do they, have insight into what their ecosystem partners like yourselves are doing, but obviously they're customers. But you have this sort of feedback loops because things are in real time. You're working directly with them. You're not sort of going through a lot of middle people. What do you guys find from your customer base? And you had just talked about sort of, the segment of the market you want to go after. What are you hearing from them that maybe the mainstream media isn't picking up on, or the types of things that they're really attracts them to using AWS, using these on-demand services that maybe isn't terribly well known to a lot of people?
Well, I think it is well known. I think the trick is, how do they do it?
Yeah.
Right. And with us being an early partner, it was more or less beat into us from a very early stage that this is the feedback loop is real, it exists, and you'll live by it. So like for example, we had a customer we had to complete an incident report for. So every MSP has issues with customers now and then, and I think this is the first one we actually had for this year. But we sent it over to Amazon. We sent it to our partner manager. We said, hey, this happened, and we don't feel we're culpable, but you should be aware of what it is. And it creates a thoughtful discussion. It creates an environment where everybody comes together and says, there's opportunities to learn here, and there's opportunities to grow together. And we probably all don't have this all figured out because things are changing so rapidly. So let's put the cards on the table and really understand what's going on. And I think they're really good at doing that. And as much as other software vendors and I can't speak for the other IaaS vendors talk about it, Amazon, it's part of their DNA.
Right. Now let's talk about VNOC. Let's talk about sort of your product/service. Having lived both on the provider side and the vendor side, I've been saying for a long time that sort of management, cloud management as a service is something that I'm surprised more and more people don't take advantage of. Although the market seems to be coming around in your guys' direction, right? We see things like IBM buying Blue Box, which is essentially, their value is around management. We're seeing some other companies starting to say, hey, we'll do management as a service. You guys have done it for quite a while. Talk about, not only what VNOC does, because it's a very interesting piece of technology and the types of services you provide, but like what you hear from customers in terms of them going like, that's either stuff that I don't want to run myself, or I don't have the skills to run and build myself.
Well, MJ can have flavor to this, but I think there are two different types of customers. There are the ones that want to do self-service, and we do let customers do that. You can sign up with us and have VNOC and run your environment entirely on your own without our management fee, and that's great. But we kind of hoped at some point when we grew up as a company, we would be a product company to some, and we're proving that out now. But our core value proposition is clearly to those customers that want that cloud management as a service, and that's where we really fill that void. Product features and positioning, it's all about augmenting what the console does and not really trying to replace it. Amazon innovates at an incredible pace, and what we learned early was that if we had a good idea, they probably already had it, or if we started developing something, it might have been in the works there. So as a small company, we didn't really want to waste resources. And I think this gets back to the collaborative nature of the partnership, where you really do want to speak with the product teams and understand where things are going as much as you can. A lot of it is under NDA, so
sure.
And sometimes we don't get read into it, which is surprising, but it does happen. But be that as it may, you want to be in a position where your product that you build or develop is complementary to the platform, not competitive. And I know Andy at the San Francisco Summit talked about marketplace competition at Amazon.com when they opened that up. And I guess that's going to be coming in a bigger way in the AWS community, where they're going to start developing more and more specific features that will encroach upon specific provider products, and we've seen that in some cases already. So we're preparing for that. But it's all about picking your market niche and understanding your value and presenting a compelling reason for customers to use you over anybody, whether it's AWS or another partner. And I don't know, MJ, do you want to talk about any product-specific features? Or
Yeah, I mean, from a VNOC standpoint, like Joel said, it does service two types of customers. One of the biggest uses that VNOC provides our customers is that accountability and global view of really what's going on in their account. Even though we're managing their account for them on their behalf, they still like to know what's going on, what's being stood up, what's being managed, how much things are costing, things of that nature, and VNOC really provides them an easy way to do that. And then more of the other side is our developer community, which we're getting much deeper in with. They love to be hands-on, and they're fantastic developers. However, there could be a knowledge gap there. What are best practices in the AWS and in AWS infrastructure, and we're providing easy ways to streamline deployments for them and baseline build-outs.
Right. Yeah, and from best I can tell, I mean, VNOC really kind of provides, sort of like Joel said, you walk this fine line between do we deliver a feature, do we augment the platform? You guys seem to do a very nice job, especially as the world is moving more towards this sort of DevOps paradigm where it's a little blurry between what developers do and what operators do, where you sort of say, we'll augment your operational team, we'll give you reporting, we'll give you visibility into, kind of what's going on from an operations perspective. But if the team wants to have, a closer way to get to the console to sort of natively use the underlying platform and tools, we're not going to be a barrier to you getting there. And, it feels like you guys have sort of provided that right connection point or that right set of services on top of the platform without sort of impinging on the platform. Let's talk for a second. The AWS ecosystem is pretty broad and diverse today. I mean, you can find companies that do logging. You can find companies that do application management. You can find companies that do all sorts of things. You guys have some unique partnerships that you do with some other companies. Talk about sort of how you pick the types of partners you want to put into your offerings and what you have to do with them to make sure that not only from an API perspective and a technology perspective that you're aligned, but also that your customers get sort of one consistent economic model in terms of pricing and who they deal with and so forth.
Well, two different requirements in choosing a partner here. Of course, the technology has to be solid, and then the business model their licensing model has to support Cloudnexa's business model. And interestingly enough, putting those two together can create a difficult time in finding partners because we strongly believe in this utility pricing model. It's part of our core value prop when we talk to customers about, look, you can turn us on, you can turn us off. And we didn't want to suggest, like Trend, for example, where the customer would have to purchase a license for a year and then potentially put it on the shelf if they decided the cloud wasn't the right solution for them. So in gathering our technology partners, Trend Micro and AppDynamics and Sumo Logic, after we vetted out the technology, we had to come to terms on getting them to adopt the licensing model. And, it took a lot of work. And honestly, it's still some tweaking. But, I'd like to believe it is the model of things to come. I think that we pioneered the cloud management-as-a-service model, and I think we're starting to see more firms understand that utility pricing for all these vendors makes a lot of sense. It just really speaks to the customer's requirements.
Right.
And that's what it's about as a vendor, right? You want to meet the customer's requirements. And, to some, cloud is not a definite thing. They're going to try it. They're going to move a small workload there and see how it works for them. And so the more risk you can mitigate in your offerings, the easier it is for those customers to choose you over somebody else.
Right. So last question, because I know you guys have things to do, and obviously the summit is coming up tomorrow, so you're obviously busy. You've been doing this with AWS for quite a while now. I mean, 6, 7, 8 years almost. What have you seen in the shift in terms of the workloads that people not only trust moving into AWS, but trust for you to help them with? I mean, you just talked for a second about sort of moving smaller ones, but I've heard you talk about, you joking with friends about, hey, people want to move ERP systems. So what are you seeing in terms of that, people's confidence level and what they're interested in moving or what they're interested in spinning up as new?
So the biggest app or framework I would say is definitely a CMS. That's one of the biggest that we see. In terms of what people are most comfortable moving forward with are new apps for sure. So anything that is being built internally today, a lot of our clients are looking AWS first before anywhere else. But then in terms of like business apps, legacy apps, I mean, it's pretty wide and broad. I mean, we not only deal with ERP systems, but electronic medical records. That's a big trend right now. We're getting a lot of HIPAA clients, and EMR is definitely, they're looking at taking that out of data centers or colos or in-house today and moving that over to AWS, and AWS has all the tools and certifications required to host that type of information. One other very popular platform that we see is definitely e-commerce. We're getting a lot of e-commerce sites almost on a daily basis coming over from their legacy colos, which probably have lack of redundancy, lack of scalability, and now these e-com sites are growing, and they're looking for the right solution for it, and AWS provides that.
Gotcha. No, makes sense. So no, we've reached a point where there really aren't any barriers technology-wise. It's just a matter of them feeling comfortable with it, finding the right partners, finding the right way to sort of organizationally to get those applications there. Guys, I'm gonna wrap this up because, like I said, I know you've got a lot to do. Any big things that you want to talk about going into AWS Summit, either what you're looking for from AWS or things that you're going to be announcing and people should be looking for if they're in New York?
Well, we've got some press releases coming out on some VNOC updates, so stay tuned for those. And of course, last week we just announced I believe it was last week we announced the MSP certification, which we passed. It took us a little longer. Largely just because of resources here, but we announced that last week. And, we're anxious to hear Werner. It's always good to hear Werner's take on things. It's always just a little bit different than some of the other management team members. And we'll see. I think there's going to be some announcements. New York is always an interesting time. There's always these little projects that kind of leak out and come out. So we're just like everybody else. We're anxious to see, and I'll tell you, there's a tremendous amount of buzz. I'm expecting, last year they ran out of badges, so if last year's any indication, I'm sure the Javits Center is going to just be packed.
Right.
Thursday.
Yeah, excellent. Well, guys, listen, thank you so much for the time, folks. As we've talked about with a lot of companies, you can go trial out what Cloudnexa does. You can go to cloudnexa.com. You can go get the software like you guys talked about. There are, sort of tiers that you can work with the software, work with the service for free. You can obviously, you can pay for it as well, but it's kind of a very interesting way, sort of low friction way of not only making your AWS experience better, but then having the expertise from people that have been doing this for a very long time to help you, better run your environment. So for Joel and MJ, thank you so much for being on. Guys, any last things people ought to go take a look at for you?
Go Cloudnexa, go AWS.
Excellent. Well, guys, thanks so much, folks. As always, you can find us on Twitter at the Cloudcast.net or on the web at the Cloudcast.net. So for Joel and MJ and the folks at Cloudnexa, and for Aaron, who'll be back next week, thanks for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.